Hi, I'm Sam Roberts from Roberts Geospatial. Today I just want to take a quick look at the WorldCover raster dataset. So the website is on the screen there. Just go searching for WorldCover and you'll find it. It comes from the European Space Agency. It was released late last year, 2021, and it's a global land cover classification raster at approximately 10-meter resolution for the whole globe, excluding the ocean and excluding Antarctica. So there's a website. It comes with a PDF manual. So here's a bit of a preview of the data set. And if we scroll down a bit, you'll find here the downloadable tiles. As for most of these things, it's been split into squillions of individual rasters. And so in this case, there are about 2,600 odd TIFF files, and they're cloud optimized GeoTIFF files, which you can download. So they have internal overview pyramids, and you can display these things directly in MapInfo Pro or ProRaster. But as you can see from this diagram, the tiles only include the land masses. They don't have the oceans, and they don't have the Antarctica. So that little preview that we saw up here isn't exactly what you see when you download it, because you don't have all this blue and you don't have Antarctica down here. So in this manual, you'll find useful information. Here's the classification table, different classes and the colors and descriptions of what they all are. And then further down, you'll find information on how to download it. So for example, you can download it from Zenodo directly. Or what I did was download it from Amazon, from their S3 bucket. I find that's faster and more reliable. So that's easy work. You just installed the Amazon command line tool, and then there's a command here that you can just use to copy the data from Amazon down to your local computer. So that will give you 2,600 odd TIFF files on your local hard disk. So let's just bring up ProRaster. So here's a TIFF file, so let's grab one. Nice big one, perhaps, the biggest one. And that's what it looks like when you display it. So these TIFF files are image palette. They're basically images. They have a color palette in them. And if you zoom in, then the only information you get is the color. It doesn't tell you that this is forest and that this is croplands. That information is not in the file. So to add that information, you need to turn the raster from what's effectively just an image into a classified raster. So the way that I generally go about that is I use a virtual raster. So if we just bring this into Notepad here. So virtual raster, recall, is just an XML script. So here's a virtual raster where I've put in the classification table and it links to one of these TIFF files, or it can link to multiple TIFF files. And so that when you put that into MapInfo Pro or into ProRaster, that's going to give you a classified raster instead of just an image. So you get about 115 gigabytes of TIFF files. At 10-meter resolution, you're looking at a very large raster. Now, working with 2,500 TIFF files is always a bit problematic in terms of performance and so forth. You can't take 2,500 TIFF files and display them in MapInfo Pro through the raster engine. It runs out of file handles, and so it doesn't like doing that. And so there are a couple of ways around that. For example, you can create a GDAL VRT file, which is a virtual raster, and display them that way. GDAL handles the management of the file handles in that case. Or you can merge them all together back into an MRR. And that's what I tend to do. So I did run a merge operation, and I merged them all back together. So I started out with 115 gigabytes of TIFFs, and I ended up with 86 gigabytes in a MRR file. So here's the MRR, and as you can see, as I move the cursor over the various classifications, you actually see some classification information rather than just color. So this is a true classified raster, and it's got all the data in it. And so just broadly speaking, you can see that Antarctica is not down here, and there's no ocean, but there is a little bit of ocean around the edges of each of the continents. So they've included a bit of water, but not the whole thing. So let's take a look at that in MapInfo Pro, just quickly. Maybe we'll just change now to a full screen view. So here's MapInfo Pro running. There's that raster displayed. And so for example, we can go into the map here and add in a legend. And I just need to bring that over there. So here's our legend, for example, generated by MapInfo Pro from that classified raster. So you can see classifications there and colors matching that. Okay, so that's the MRR in MapInfo Pro. If we come back to ProRaster, let's go in and put a little bit of terrain over the top of this thing, so we get a little bit of shadow. Might just turn that down and just dial this up a little bit, and we'll make that full. Perhaps I'm not quite on full screen for some reason. OBS is confusing me. So here we have the raster. So let's just have a quick look around. So if we go to Australia, so this kind of pink color is cropland. So you can see the wheat belts through Australia, through South Australia, and in Victoria, and then all of the cropland belts up here through New South Wales and Queensland. Perhaps if we zoom in a bit here into the Hunter Valley, you can start to see all the coal mining operations that are in Hunter Valley and contributing to global warming. Perhaps over the other side, continuing the theme of environmental destruction, go up to the Pilbara and get an idea for how vast the Pilbara iron ore mines are and how much landscape they're destroying up in Western Australia. There's the mining camp, and there's one of the mining operations, and of course they're all over the place, here, there, and everywhere. Absolutely enormous. Just looking at that cropland, for example, we can compare, say Australia to the vast amount of cropland that's in India, and up here, fairly topical, I suppose, is Ukraine. You can see the enormous amount of cropping in Ukraine, and that's why it's a food bowl for the world. Perhaps over here in the US, Los Angeles, up through the Napa Valley. Out here is Las Vegas, and you can follow your way up through the Grand Canyon up there and see the land use up that way. So it's a really interesting data set. Just a final thing, just a quick demonstration of what you might do to do some analysis of this data set. So what you can do is use, if for example you want to get some statistics about a certain area. So let's say I was going to go to a local government area in Australia. So I need a polygon. So I get a polygon for that local government area. And I've got one for Warrumbungle. And then I create a virtual raster, which I think this is the one. Okay, so here's my Warrumbungle local shire, and here's the data set for that area. So we've got a virtual raster here that's reprojecting it into a UTM projection, and clipping it to this polygon. So if we zoom right in, you can see that it's clipped to high resolution to that polygon on the fly. And then you can just use the statistics calculation options in MapInfo or in ProRaster to examine this stuff. So let me get rid of that and go into the raster source editor. So if we take that raster, here it is, we just clean it and then do a prepare operation. This will compute the statistics. Just close that down and then go into the information for this raster, and brings up this dialog and prints out all this stuff. And if you go into here up to the top, near around here, you'll see here's all the classes, here the classification table, and then it'll give you some distribution statistics for the first band, which is the class index band, and down here is the histogram. And it's a little bit, you have to do some interpretation, but we're looking at count numbers here. So if we look at these numbers here, we've got 1,000, 1, 2, 3, 6, 6, 6, blah, 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 cells that have valid data in them. Now the cells are 10 by 10, so this turns out to, what would it be, 12,366 square kilometres, which is the area of that local government area polygon. And so then you look at the count data for the individual classifications, and that gives you the square kilometres for each of those individual classifications. So I've just got that in this text file. Oops, not that one. Here's the stats. So just, sorry, bring that over. So in this particular shire, for example, you can see we've got 5,673 square kilometres of tree cover, 6.8 of shrubland, 5,224 kilometres of square k's of grassland, 1413 of cropland, 11 of built up, 33 sparse vegetation, no snow and ice, 3 square kilometres of permanent water, no herbaceous wetland, mangroves, or moss and lichen. So that can give you some useful information and actually draw some statistical information out of this raster rather than just giving you a nice view. So go and check it out. It's a great data set. It's huge. It's probably the largest raster that I've ever worked with, something like 10 trillion data points in it. And so it's challenging, but I think it will be very valuable to certain customers.